All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Serious Angler podcast, powered by our friends over at X2 Power Batteries. We're back with the captain, Mr. Andy Full. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Eichbrett. And Andy, I'm just for this show, I'm rocking some specialty apparel that we got sent to us. I got the St. Lawrence River Bronzeback hat that we had sent to us for a while because it just felt fitting. And then I don't know if people have seen it yet. You guys know that we're good friends with the show and Andrew Hayes over at Tackle Talk Podcast, but he's got a new shirt called it's Give Him the Beans.
Yeah, I need that shirt. That's stickers. Fantastic.
Yeah. So I figured it was fitting because we're getting on a damn hammer tonight. We got Mr. Cobi Pellerito, smallmouth bass trophy hunter, if you will. I mean, really just bass trophy hunter in general because the man wreaks havoc.
I have a question. Does he catch small fish at all? Because every post is a giant. It's like 7 to 9 pounds. And I'm like, man, I fish for smallmouth every dang day. And I catch maybe 15 to 20 over 6 a year. And I'm just like, this guy's trumping me every post. I'm like, freaking A.
Well, that is a question you can ask him when we get him on here. But we got a legend on the show tonight. We got a legend that comments here at Mr. Nick Kuzvis. Both of them, no stranger to the show. I don't know if people have, if they've been around for a couple of years. We've had shows with Cobi. We've had shows with Nick. You've had Nick on the Lure Lab. We've also had shows with Nick and Cobi on together back in the probably.
Yeah, we've had some good episodes with these dudes.
Yeah, freaking hammers, dude. Tackle tinkerers, people that we really can learn a lot from, and I think they're honestly they're hammers in their own right, and the people that know. But I feel like you could probably put them in the bucket of people that are very underrated when it comes from a national scale of people that just like understand the things that make bass tick that the common angler may not understand, if that makes any sense. Yeah, that's why we love to get them on here because they think about things completely different, and especially when it comes to approaching these just magnum trophy size fish. You're not just fishing the same old thing, the same old way. Like you're taking a different approach to it. There's a time aspect, we're going to dive into all of that when we get them on here, but definitely make sure you guys are staying tuned for the full show because this one's going to be rowdy. But
yeah, what I'm excited about too is not to drop the ball early on what we're talking about, but recently we had Nick on the Lure Lab when we talked about a certain individual bait, right? And I'm interested to foreshadow here and talk about that same bait with Cobi tonight and why it just seems to be catching larger than average smallmouth than basically any other bait on the market at the moment, which I think is the iconic part about this particular megabass lure that we're going to be talking about is the fact that it just catches giant smallmouth. And I'm really excited to dive into that.
Yeah. It's going to be freaking sick, man. But we're going to get into that here in a second. We're going to bring Cobi on. But before we do, if you guys missed last night's Fantasy Fishing Live, we had the crew on, as well as Jake Maddox, who is no stranger to Smith Lake, to help us preview this week's tournament down on Smith Lake for the elites. Sounds like it's been quite the steamy practice for them boys.
Yeah, I think the water temp is as hot as the air temp, so that does not make a difference. It probably just makes it more humid and damp and hot than anything. You can't even jump in the lake for a reprieve. You're just going to go in and come out just as hot as you were before you went in.
It's like going outside when it's 90 degrees and sunny and then jumping into a jacuzzi, pretty much. Yeah. That's basically what it's
boiling.
Like. Yeah.
Fantastic. Those poor bass.
I know, dude. Dude, looking at this right now, I love trucker hats, but for whatever reason, the flat brims make me look like such a turd. I don't know what it is. They look good on you. You can rock a flat brim.
You know what it is? You can't wear it straight. It has to be just slightly off to the side.
See, I'm gonna change it up. I'm gonna copy you here, and I'm gonna rock it backwards here.
Yeah, there we go.
Like freaking goober. But it felt like the bronzeback hat just made sense for the show.
Yeah,
we're talking smallies, but it's gonna be a good one. So real quick for you guys too, if you have been keeping up with the Omnia fishing sales that have been going on, they're dropping a limited edition USA Omnia hat. That's freaking dope.
Yeah,
I need to get my hands on one, and they're gonna do it in conjunction with a sale, and that sale is 20% off of Rapala hardbaits. So if you're looking to get any more DTs, the new Maverick, things like that, anything you'd like Rapala wise, 20% off. The link's down below for Omnia Fishing, as well as some of the baits we're going to talk about with Cobi tonight. You guys can check those links out down below. Head straight to Omnia.
Those wire tip fish guys love that Maverick jerkbait. That thing's got wicked action to it. So it's a good time to get a USA Edition Omnia hat. Pick up some Mavericks.
It is a freaking cool hat. I do want to get my hands on it. But day one of James River, of course, would have been nice to watch, but unfortunately that is not being live streamed.
I forgot there was a tournament today, not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean, well, another MLF tournament and another day that Jacob Wheeler is leading. Shocker there. But would have been nice to see.
Not just leading, blowing the doors off of it.
Yeah, and it's cool to see.
He's got 78 pounds in seconds, 35 or 36?
40s or 50s, I think, because it's a name that popped out to me that I haven't seen up there in a while, and that's Skeet Reese, who also did a great episode on Tackle Talk. If you guys have not checked that one out yet, but yeah, cool to see, I guess. Looking forward to actually watching it live here in a couple days. But next week, what you guys can look forward to after this episode with Cobi is we have a banger episode next Tuesday Night Live. And that is going to be, we have Drew Gill coming on the show, as well as John Garrett. And we have also Carl Jocumson will be joining us with Cliff Prince and whoever wins the Fear My Heart incentive for Smith. So we have quite the damn show coming up next week too. So we're getting you guys some back-to-back week heaters here. But it's going to be a fun week next week as well. But I think without further ado, let's get to today's show, because today's show is going to be a banger. Let's get him on here. It's been a minute. Mr. Cobi Pellerito, what's going on, bro?
What's up,
Hammer? What's up, guys? How are you guys?
Doing good, man. We talked a little bit this morning. It sounded like you had some storms rolling through too, but I think we're going through the same thing of these storm systems that keep rolling through the Midwest and the Northeast.
Yeah, just ripping around. We got tons of rain, tons of crazy wind. Yeah, we had power out for a few hours today, but we're back in business now. So glad to have the lights back on.
Yeah, can't wait for them to get here tomorrow.
Exactly.
Yeah, you'll probably get it in like a day or two, and then I'll get whatever you guys did back, and it's just back and forth. It's been wonky. We've been a really wet spring, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy in that regard, but I feel like the Midwest needed it though. Like you guys have needed rain, like between Minnesota, Wisconsin, and you guys. I feel like you haven't in recent years gotten as much rain as you've needed.
You got it all at once.
Yeah, we got our thing now. Yeah, I think it's been interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it affects the Great Lake levels and stuff too. Just because we've been, things have been dropping slowly. But I'm wondering how, with all this extra influx, if it will kind of help stabilize things a little bit, so we don't continue to drop out.
Yeah. Well, dude, it's obviously, like we mentioned earlier, it's been a minute, since we got in the show, although we've been keeping up with you, and obviously all the giants that you've been catching, we see it on social media. If you guys aren't following Cobi, you definitely freaking need to. But bro, like what's you been up to lately? What's been going on in the life of Cobi Pellerito besides catching freaking giant bass?
Yeah, man, there's been all kinds of changes since we last got to hang out. Let me think where to start. We got a house. I've got married. All kinds of good stuff. Lots of fun things changing in my world. So, not complaining one bit. I'm blessed in many ways, that's for sure. And then obviously the fishing has been continuing to grow and continuing to improve as I continue to be consumed by these overly oversized fish. But it's been a lot of fun, man, and to see it come to a point with something. The fish that we'll talk about a little bit more later tonight. It's been really cool to see the work come together like that. That's for sure.
Yeah, man. I think that's the one thing where social media can be a little bit of a misconception. Where I've seen like yourself, like people that are active on social media, I try to post often, and some people are like, man, I wish I was fishing as much as you, and then where it's like. It might look like that on social media, but I can assure you that is not the case. I am out once, maybe twice a week. But like somebody in your case, I mean, for those big ones, regardless of the quantity of times you're on the water, regardless, you're always putting in the time to go and try and chase those. So what is the schedule looking like for you to try and get out on the water, at least like per week, to go and chase these giants.
That's a great way to start, because you're right. It happens a lot where you hear, you're like, man, how do you fish every day for a living? And I'm like, buddy, I promise you, I wish I did. And it's the exact opposite. I mean, my wife just completed her master's degree. We're homeschooling our little one, as well as, trying to manage a bit my own business and such like that. There's a lot of other elements pulling at your time all the time. So my time on the water is not what it once was, but it's, each day I try to make the most of it when I do get the time out, and so there might be periods where I'll get out for a couple days in a row, or there might be a period, like, for example, this month I've only been on the water just a smidgen, just a couple days. And one thing, I was rewarded during those couple days, but yeah, I just try. Yeah, I've been fortunate to make the most and still come across with the right fish, even with the limited or shortened number of days on the water per season. I don't know if I could give you like a days per week, but it's kind of, I try to at least make it one a week. Usually, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 5 if I'm at, if I got a good window, but it really just depends on where things go back and forth.
Yeah. When you got the chance to go, you're going. You're taking every chance.
You got to go. Yep. You got to go. And Mother Nature's not always kind, but we try to make the most of that.
Yeah, especially when we're talking Great Lakes here. It's preaching to the choir here, but yeah, it's your window to go, as you mentioned, might not always be open. It might be open your schedule, but Mother Nature might not agree.
Yeah, sometimes your window should be 4 hours and it turns into 40 minutes. So it's like, oh crap.
Yeah. I'm sure you've been there too. You run all the way to this spot, and then that wind is already hitting the back of your neck, and you're like, I gotta go right now. I can't push it. And so it's that happens.
It's the worst when you have clients in the boat.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that'd be a whole nother element to the situation, because they just got done bouncing out there, and then you're like, now we got to go back and do it again.
Or my favorite is when it's like flat calm and your boat's positioned a certain way and you just feel it, and you're like, guys, we only got like 5 more minutes, and it's usually like, oops, I waited 6 minutes and we're in danger.
Yes. You know exactly what it's like, dude. It's like, as soon as you start to see it change on the horizon, you got to start putting rods up and like think about it. And then it's just, it's a different game, man. And a lot of people don't quite realize how extreme it can go in such a short time. And when you have, an older boat, you have to take more precautions to conserve your gear, and if you don't, you'll end up paying for it. I separated a transom last summer, and it took me out of the game for just a couple weeks, and thankfully I had a guy that did it quickly, but it cost more money than I would like to talk about.
At that point, you should have just bought a new boat almost.
I can't get rid of my Champion. You know that.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair.
Keep it alive at all costs.
Yes, exactly. It's a wonderful boat, man. It's so much fun.
Well, especially all that fish juju.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the exact damn same thing.
Kind of with this hat, man. This hat's got some. I just washed it, and it turned like 3 shades lighter. But I've caught some big fish wearing this hat.
Isn't that funny though? When you think about it, like from an angler standpoint, I feel like sports and fishing, there's such a superstition when it comes to that, where there's some people that might not feed into it, but there's some people where it's like, I have the lucky hat. Like if you have a great day, you win a tournament on one hat, you're going to ride that hat basically until you have a bad day. And then you're going to switch it up. It's the same thing. You're going to wear the same pants, the same underwear, the same shirt. Like it's
like for me last year, it was my khaki pants and the olive green Blackfish Sun hoodie that I have. And that's what I wore like every tournament, because it was just good. I'm like, I'm gonna catch them today. I'm gonna be fine.
It was working,
and it worked all year.
You look good. You feel good, right?
I wore it. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
it's all
it's all up here, but we need to make sure we are doing everything correct. So.
100%.
Exactly. I mean, it's kind of like the banana thing, right? Like you talk to most fishermen, they'll be weird about having a banana in the boat. But you think about where that started, and like, having spiders in the bananas from them being shipped across seas. Like, we don't deal with that anymore. Like, but we're still afraid to have a banana in the boat.
Right. Well, dude, for anybody that's been watching your social media, we're just gonna let the cat out of the bag now because I'm so freaking curious about it. Is dude, you caught a freaking magnum, like one that people may never even get close to by 2-3 pounds in their lifetime when it comes to a smallmouth. So tell us again how big that was, and then obviously we don't need like the nitty gritty, give anything away here, but tell us at least the fish story from your POV on this freaking giant.
No, I'd love to. Yeah, it was. She was 23 inches long and weighed 9 pounds 3 ounces. I'm a big fan of lengths and stuff, kind of like you kayak guys are as well, because I love comparing sizes and such. But yeah, so she was 23 by 18 inches around, and she weighed 9 pounds 3 ounces. It still is hard for me to, comprehend it and talk about it. That fish means so much to me. My whole adult life has been centered around finding a fish of that caliber. And so when it came to a point when I caught that fish, it was a really, really special thing. But I'll take a step back first, and we'll get into the fish details of the story, I guess we could say, because everybody loves fish stories. I was kind of poking around, exploring some stuff that I haven't fished in a little while, and I caught a big one in the morning. There's a good breakdown of this article that I did with Pete Robbins through Megabass. It's on Megabass's website about kind of the whole day and the process, but I'll rehash it here. I caught a big one in the morning to start things off, and I was jacked. I felt like I was kind of on the right pattern, but I wasn't seeing a lot of fish. I was only kind of seeing one here, one there, and I had a 612 in the morning right to start things off the get go, and I was like, awesome, this is a great, great fish, good way to start, it's a key, right? It shows you that you're doing something right. And so I was kind of bebopping around. I caught a few more males creeping around in random spots, and it was super sunny. And then we had a little bit of cloud current blow in, and the wind started to pick up a little bit more, as it always does. And I moved over to another shallow line that I had seen earlier that I had fished in the past. I was creeping around in shallow water. So I should give some more details here. I was sitting in about 5 foot, casting to a transition between like sand and rock that went from like 2 to 4. It was like a little bit of slope. But it was kind of like a little highway line that I think the fish utilize both coming in and both going back out, when leaving areas where they're spawning, or whether they be, feasting on bugs and stuff. Like now we're dealing with the mayfly hatch. And so I had, because of like the lack of sun, lack of visibility, and the wind and stuff, I lost my line of sight. So throughout the day I had been seeing fish creeping, and I was casting visual fish. And I had turned off my electronics because I was just creeping around up shallow. Everything was all black, just creeping around, looking in my eyes. I love to do that. It's my favorite way to fish. And I fired out a big long cast, and I'm winding the dark sleeper along. And I just get absolutely rocked. I mean, just like fluorocarbon jumps, just doing. And the only time I felt a bite like that previously was my previous PB, which was an 8.2 last year, bit a small tube, in a similar manner. And it was just such a distinct bite, like just like doing, like I can only describe it with that word, the word doing, because it was like that. And so I get bit like by this fish. I wind down, I set, and it just pulled off, just nothing, just like a fraction of a second, it was there. So I just kept, I'm like, there might have been, maybe there's another one with her. So I keep winding it, like another couple scoots, another couple hops, and it gets cracked again. I see the fluoro jump again, doing, because I'm holding the rod down at an angle. So you see it go, doing. And that time I just waited and nothing. So I do a couple more cranks just like this. And at this point, it's getting a little closer to the boat. And one more time I see it go, it's in between waves, so I'm up there standing around, and it's like, doing. And this time it goes tight, and I wind down, I crack to the side, and it just absolutely folds this rod over. I mean, just right in half. And I'm like, what the heck? I was like, did I hook another drum? You know what I mean? Like, and it comes up, because it's in such shallow water, the fish has nowhere to go but up, right? So she comes up wallering, can't clear the water. I'm like, sweet, it's a big one. I was like, it's got to be 7+, because I got a good look at her. She's doing this across the whole surface for 5-10 seconds straight, just I'm like, oh, it's a 7+. You're never thinking, like, even as much as I focus on these oversized fish, I'm never thinking like, oh, it's a 9. Like, I'm not like, oh, it's a 9-pounder. You just don't. That's just not a number you think about, right?
You're like,
so
I know it's big,
up,
but I don't know how big.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so she's wallering, and then she, she runs down, runs at me. So I'm lining out. She gets both sides, and I can't even really turn her. She would just zig under the boat for a second and then turn and go the other way. And I was just like, just trying to keep tension, right? Just trying to keep it tight, make sure she doesn't get any slack. And I scoop it. I'm solo, like always. And I scoop it. And, I take that breath, I'm all out of breath because I'm all worked up. And I bend down. I'm like, dude, this thing's huge. And I bend down, I lip it. And as soon as I lift it, pop the bait out, I pop the sleeper out of the top of its mouth. I just get instantly overcome with emotions. Like, I'm just completely overwhelmed, like all choked up. I start like tearing up. I start crying. I'm like, I just knew that this was the fish, like the fish that I've just been so obsessed with the last couple of years. And so all I can think, I hadn't waited or anything yet. I put her back in the net like I always do, because I never like to box them or anything like that. So I put her back in the net so she can swim around, she can breathe. I can breathe. I can catch up. We're both basically catching our breath at this point. And I'm like, I could call my wife. I'm going to FaceTime her, because I usually FaceTime her when I'm weighing big fish. I FaceTime her or my good buddy Garrett Rockamora down in Florida. We always do like PB FaceTime calls or whatever. And so I call her, and I'm like, she answers the phone. And I'm just still like, I can't even talk. She's like, are you okay? She thought I was like in an accident. And I'm like, all I can say is like, I caught her. I'm just like, I'm all choked up. And yeah. And so I put them down. I'm like, all right, I'm going to weigh it. I want you guys to be here to watch this, And so I get her out. I have a special weigh bag that I use, that I kind of modified and made to kind of cradle the fish, so there's no stress in like the jaws, the gill plates. So I get the bag wet. I tear it out on the scale, make sure we're all zeros. I put the fish in the bag, and she fills it like a Florida largemouth. Like just fills it. I'm like, dude, what? I'm still not thinking 9, but I'm like, this thing's huge. And I pick up the scale. I'm trying to hold it nice and steady, and it's flashing like 8:15 to 9:14. I'm like, what is going on?
Oh no!
And I
waves,
and I'm like, there's no way. And so it's flashing back and forth in the waves. I'm trying to get it stable. I'm like, I think it's like between 9.2 and 9.4. You know how they get kind of in that zone. They'll kind of settle a little bit. I'm like, I gotta get a better weight. So I put her back in the bag, or put her back in the net. I'm sorry, so she can breathe. And I kind of scoop my boat up just shallow enough, because I was close enough to shore that I could kind of beach myself on this little edge. And so I kind of just basically like bottomed out the boat. And I like power pulled down, so it's facing at the back of the wind, so the boat was more stable. And then I crawl, I pull the fish. The fish is like side, so I'm like holding the net in one hand, steering up, trying to like beach it, but not rock, crash into rocks. And then I slide back down to the cockpit and put her in the bag, again, and hold it up. And that's when it locked in at the 9.3. It was much, much easier that time, because I wasn't moving all over the place and the wind wasn't blasting me. And it was. Yeah, I after that I did the length, did the girth, and then I put her back in the net again to kind of let her chill, and was able to kind of get some cool pictures, get some GoPro pictures, the ones that you guys probably saw, a couple quick snaps with my Canon, and then I turned her loose. That was pretty much as simple as it was. I didn't want to add any additional stress to that fish. She was, obviously I love them so much, so I want her to be stronger, right? Those genetics are so important to take care of, and so she went back very quickly, very healthily, and it was. I told a buddy of mine that like the moment at the end of it all, like when I'm holding her in the water, boat side, and I'm watching her, was probably one of the coolest parts of it, because you're just sitting there holding this fish that's just so much bigger than anything that I've ever caught or seen frame wise. I mean, she wasn't. It's hard to describe, but she wasn't even like plump, like your pre-spawn egg weight. Like she was just tall in every. I mean, I swear her tail. I wish I would have gotten tail girth. I swear her tail was this big across, like at the base of it. Dude. It was unbelievable. Tuna. It was really cool. Yeah, it really was, man. It was the closest. Yeah, it was really cool, really special. Wow. That's for sure.
That is the epitome. So Andy coined this term, probably 2 years ago, Andy, the brown fin tuna. That is the epitome
That's
of a
tuna.
damn brown fin tuna right there, dude.
It totally is. It totally is. It's a special thing, that's for sure.
Well, there's a couple things on this to call out. And it's one for people that might, urge you guys strongly to go to Cobi's social media. You can see the pictures. We also shared it to our page today. Guys, go look at this wasn't like a $15 Rapala scale either. Like this was like the legit scale that like these tournament organizations are using. And he's got a picture of it all. But dude, like also, I really love the fact that you choose to keep her in the net over the live well. And it's nothing against guys that put them in the I'd rather a guy put a fish in a live well than just holding him out of the water. But the fact that keeping her in the net versus the live well, that's way much less stress on that fish. And completely love the conservational side that you take for taking care of this fish, managing the fish. That says a lot too, man. Like that's one thing to be a trophy hunter, and then it's the epitome of somebody that chases a fish, like a true deer hunter. The people that care most about the deer are the hunters. It's kind of just goes to show that we might love catching these fish, but we're also the ones that are taking care of them the most. That's freaking awesome, dude.
Absolutely. That's great. That's a great point. Thank you, Matt. Yeah, it's extremely important to me to make sure that they leave their interaction with me, just as healthy as they were beforehand, right? That's a big priority to me, is to make sure, because if I let that fish go and someone else is able to catch her next year, you might be 10, you know what I mean? Or I might be able to catch another one later, and it might be a few ounces heavier. And it's really important that they're able to spread their genetics and be healthy. And without those fish, I don't know what I'd do with my life. So we have to treat them that way with respect.
Here's my first question for you on a caliber of fish like that. And obviously you've caught I don't even know. I'm sure you're keeping track at this point, but like 7+ class of these fish.
Yeah.
You think they have a tendency to live more up in that, 3 to 5 feet that you were in versus way out deep that everybody assumes they're in?
I don't necessarily think so. I think the fish have different personalities, right? We have different fish that have more of a different lifestyle. You'll have some that, like you said, tend to live in the shallower zones. That might just be their tendencies. We have some that, come up and spawn and then boogie back out deep as quick as they can. And then you have some, like you guys deal with on the far side of Erie, that never come shallow. Those fish essentially always live out in the depths of the, and I think that we kind of deal with different, kind of like a big trophy deer. And, there's ones that live in different styles, have different habits. And I think that we have the same thing with the smallmouth. There's little windows, I think, when some of them are accessible in more shallower waters or more relating to a piece of structure than other portions of the year. And then there's, the rest of the year, a fish might just be completely pelagic and be completely open basin based, which is almost impossible for us, as anglers to keep track of without, simply running across her with a ball of bait or something like that. There's a lot of things that, kind of lost my train of thought there. There's a lot of things I think that, that have to do with timing to cross paths with a fish of that caliber,
Yeah. And with that, I'm curious, kind of almost to backtrack a little bit, but trophy smallmouth fishing, like hunting for that caliber of fish, what do you think? Like, if you had to stick a definition to that, it's probably not going out and catching 100 4-pounders until you run into one big one. You're probably not catching too many fish a day. So what is that definition?
Not at all. It's very much so a change of your mindset and a change of your approach. It's a restructuring of everything that that most people are trying to do in a day, right? Like we all grew up wanting to just catch fish as we're learning it, as we're growing as anglers. You want to just catch fish. That's fun. That's what we got into it for, right? That bite that's at the hook. And then once you take that step or that transition to focusing on the next level of fish, right? Or targeting specifically adult fish that are exceeding the standards of the normal population, you have to be okay with no bites for hours on end, or no bites or no interactions. You know, you almost start to discount interactions as opposed to bites. I sound like a musky fisherman, right? Oh, I got one follow today. You know, like you start to transition into that approach of, you know, I had 4 interactions, I got 2 bites, and I landed one of them. But that one fish was, you know, 6.5 pounds. You know, and there's just a transition into your approach and your style of fishing, right? You're not trying to follow the masses, but you are trying to follow what the fish are doing, what their seasonal movements are doing. You're just trying to think about, okay, if all of the males are here getting ready to make a bed, if all the males are here, you know, eating mayflies, where is that smarter than average, larger than average fish that still needs the calorie intake, but doesn't want to be intermingling with everybody that's being caught? You know, where is that fish sitting, but still putting herself in the right position to gain the weight that they need to keep up with keep up with that bod, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, dude, I feel like once you can start to dial that in, the things that you can understand about the movement of males versus females and that migration can completely change your route as an angler of your seasonal pattern, if that makes any sense. Like that probably just changes your whole perspective on things and gives you probably a better understanding of how the two, you know, male females are, how they operate. You know what I mean? Like that's got to be pretty impressive. I can't even fathom what that is to understand that.
Sorry, you broke up there a little bit at the end of it, but I think I got the gist of what you're saying. It's definitely important to kind of be able to restructure what you're thinking and how you're approaching it, you know, because you have to be, you know, if you fish too much history or fish too much, this is what the rest of them are doing, you know, it really can be, it can keep you from, you know, tangling with those fish of the next level.
Well, real fast, before we continue this conversation, I believe he's done this before. We never really talk about this, but Dexter's Lure Labs in the chat and just gifted 10 Serious Angler Network memberships. To the 10 folks that were just gifted a membership, that's freaking awesome. Thank you to Dexter's Lure Lab for doing that. Definitely do not have to. We never ask people to donate at all on these live streams, but seriously appreciate you for doing that.
You rocked.
10 new people got memberships to the Serious Angler Network YouTube channel. So congrats to those guys, and we'll see what we can do to make it worth your while. Let us know in the comments if there's some things you want us to see that we could do for members only. But yeah, seriously, appreciate that. But dude, so with that mindset, like it's something that you just need to accept that you might not catch a single bass that day. And that might, you know, especially I feel like when you set out on the goal of, I'm just going to go try and catch the biggest fish in the lake, I feel like you're probably going to blank for a day, 2 days, maybe even, you know, your first 10 trips per se. I feel like there is an adjustment period. Once things start to click, it's almost a rapid incline of starting to understand how to catch bigger fish more often. If that makes sense. Is that true? Would you say in that respect, when you change gears from catching a bunch of fish to catching just big fish?
Yeah, absolutely there is. Yeah, there's a difference in the approach, and you might go, you know, like you mentioned, you might have a change period where it's not really clicking yet, right? And you're still swinging and missing, but you know, as long as you're still moving and you're still looking around and growing with it, I think it can definitely be something that you can kind of work through, you know, in your time on the water and come to have more successes as you do it. As each day goes out and as your seasons go through, you know, your seasonal changes and your seasonal transitions with the fish movement, you can definitely see, you know, yourself, you have less of those days where you're just like, I didn't get anything today. You know, you have more of those interactions, more of those, like, you know, okay, there was one here last year. You know, you'd be amazed at how, you know, I might stumble across a fish on a spot that I haven't fished and completely spook her, completely blow the opportunity, but I can come back and look at that rock or that break or that whatever it might be, you know, the next year in that similar cyclical window, and there will be a large fish there. It might not be the same fish, but there'll be a fish there. You know, they utilize a lot of the similar structures when it comes to those true giants. You know, like they pick the prime piece, and that's going to be their stopping zone every time. You know,
right?
Cobi, can I ask you this one? How many times, like, when you're trophy smallmouth fishing, right? Like if you're on a lake and you have this pattern going down, say you have 4 spots in a particular area of lake that you're fishing that day, how many times have you rotated through those spots and caught multiple fish through the day? And they're all big ones.
That's a good question. I have kind of a goofy approach with that kind of stuff that is kind of more of just a personal thing than anything. I am often very weird about like recirculating spots on given lake or given area of the Great Lakes. I will usually, I don't know if it's like if they outsmarted me the first time, I just leave them be kind of thing. I almost always won't go back to something in the same day. I very rarely, if ever, fish the same place 2 days in a row. I almost always like force myself to kind of go do something different. And so I think that has kind of helped with, you eventually kind of run through your areas or you run out of areas, and it forces you to spend at least a portion of the day looking for something or looking around or continuing to expand. And that has helped me a lot. That approach, I think, has really sped through my, or sped up my process with, honing in massive bodies of water or honing in massive regions of water, because I have these weird little rules in my head, like I'm not going to go back to that spot. I'm going to keep going. Even if I might have not have caught the one, or I might have spooked them or missed one, we'll leave it alone and kind of just keep going.
I like that.
Yeah, we have some great questions rolling in the chat here too. Hammer in his own right of finding big bass. Alex Sandville here saying, I want to know if Cobi thinks that 9 was either at the end of its life or if it looked like to you if it had more years in it. Great question.
That's a great question, Alex. That fish was absolutely still had some time left. She was very healthy, very clean. We see a lot of these fish on the Great Lakes that, as they age, they have battle scars, right? They have sores, they have torn up fins, they have missing pieces. That fish in particular was one of the most flawless fish that I have caught that is like a really big one. He was very healthy in every element. I mean, just, full fins, full belly, no deformities, no scales, no, we often see lamprey bites, stuff like that. There wasn't any of that, which was really cool. So I personally think that she was very much so still, at a stage where she could continue to grow, which is wild to think about. I mentioned this in the article of Megabass, and this is not scientific knowledge by any means. I'm a nerd on this stuff because I love learning about these fish, but I think we're seeing these fish reach bigger sizes at a younger age than in years previous. We're seeing fish, Andy can probably attest to this, Bailey can probably attest to this. These fish are growing up with gobies in their systems from day one, right? So they're able to eat all of this food, this forage from day one, so they're able to pack on pounds at a younger age, I should say. And so I think we're seeing, rather than the previous years where a 6-pounder might have been a 14-year-old fish or a 13-year-old fish, depending where you lived. Now I would be willing to gander that we're seeing some of those fish at as early as 9 to 11 years old, because there's more forage, more calories, right? Does that make sense? You guys feel me?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that 9-pounder was a fish that was, maybe it was a 14-year-old fish that might have 2 or 3 more years. And it would be exciting to see where she could grow if she does have 3 more years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was. We have like a fisheries division here. I can't remember the exact name of it, but I was talking to a good buddy of mine who's a heck of a smallmouth angler, and he did some of I believe the netting and tagging of some of these fish and studying the age groups of them. And I'm gonna paraphrase him, but I believe he said that they were finding a lot of 8-year-old fish that were around 6 pounds in Lake Erie.
That's cool. That's
they're
awesome
growing insanely fast because of gobies.
So cool.
They're like that protein bar, your whey protein shake that you take every day to put on mass. They just they're getting 3 to 4 pounds in 4 years.
That's
they're
really
growing
cool.
a pound a year. That's
insane.
Amazing.
I mean, can you imagine though if you went to bed and you had Snickers bars or Snickers ice cream bars laying by your bed? You wake up, you have Snickers ice cream bars by your bed. You're gonna get fat eventually, right?
The saturated,
that's a lot of
fats
good looking
really
stuff
all
the time. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And not to mention the goby can't move very fast or far because it has no swim bladder, right? So it's kind of stuck to where it's at.
Yeah,
So it's
they're right. Yeah,
easier
they can
than a
hide in the rock
crawfish.
crevices. They're hard to catch there, but yeah, that's true. Yeah, less big, pinchy things too. They're an easier meal in that aspect as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard that mentioned a couple times from different locations of how, because of the gobies that lifeline, or at least the size that they can reach, has accelerated. But I've also heard in the same regard that the lifespan, the
It's
total
way
length
down.
of living is also down because of it. Because you think about it, it's like basically
Interesting. Okay.
smallmouth diabetes is all these gobies.
that makes
We
sense.
call it
Yeah.
gobyitis. It's gobyitis.
Gobyitis, yes.
Wilford Bradley says you will get that gobyitis.
Well, it's crazy because
Yeah,
we've talked
something
about
like
this
that.
a couple times on this show, especially when we get Stephen Barton, who's the fisheries biologist and also manages the fisheries division with Major League Fishing and all the stuff they do from a conservation standpoint. And he mentioned, with largemouth, if the situation, the environment is right, in 3 years, especially with Florida strains, you can have almost a 10-pounder in 3-4 years out of a fish.
Crazy.
The rate that they can grow with the right elements is insane. And I think we're seeing that. Again, to your point, Cobi, we're not the properly equipped, from a scientific standpoint to say this for fact, but I think we're seeing that happen with smallmouth too. We're just seeing that.
And our warmer water throughout the winter. We're not having as much ice on the Great Lakes, which is hurting some of the native baitfish population like emerald shiners. But in retrospect, smallmouth are having a longer feeding period and gobies are more active when that water's a little bit warmer. So they're able to feed all winter as opposed to just laying dormant on the bottom. There's bite windows every day in the Great Lakes throughout the winter because I think Lake Erie last year got down to 38 degrees. There wasn't like a lick of ice on it at any point.
That's
the
whole
it's
winter.
either second or third year in a row. Yeah. And Lake Erie is historically will
totally
freeze around
sense.
90 to 98%.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, we've had much warmer winters. I mean, you guys can probably all attest to that from even when we were all kids. The winters seem to be warming as a whole. We're able to fish I fished till almost January 1st last year up here, and that's just bonkers. And our water but when you look at like how active those fish stay, even when the water temps are in 38 degrees, 39 degrees, they still come up and jump. Like those suckers, they handle that stuff really well. And so I think
the
if you
smallmouth are great with it.
Yeah. And so I think if you have a winter where the temps stay 38, they're like, I can dig this all winter, and they're still eating, so it's really cool to see how that stuff kind of is showing itself, obviously, in the catches and stuff, and the size increases across the board.
Yeah, I think it's there's two different things at play there, because some people will think that the warmer temperatures is a bad thing in regards to, I think, it can affect the fishing in itself and make it more difficult to catch them. I just think that's a correlation between, because if it's a warmer water, it doesn't freeze as much, which allows more fishing pressure, which doesn't give them as much of a break. So I think the fishability or your catch rate, because those fish might be more pressured, might be down. But I feel like to that point though, when you allow that, you let temperature stay warmer, we're talking growth rates here, it helps there. So I think there's two different things there. It's like some people think that it's a bad thing, where I think it's just the ice is just giving these fish a break is basically what it is.
It keeps them safe for that. Yeah.
The one thing that I am worried about though, like with the Great Lakes and all lakes in the Northeast and upper Midwest, right? Staying warmer for longer, it's going to increase the growth period for these fish, so they're going to grow larger. The thing that I'm mostly worried about, and I wonder if you've seen this yet, Cobi, like on our end of Lake Erie, last year was a phenomenal year for giant bass, right? Like everybody was catching 7s, upper 6s, but we didn't see a lot of like high 4s, low 5s. It was either 5.5 and bigger or under 4. As to where this year, it seems like there's less giants, but we have more 5s. So I feel like we're going to see like more ups and downs quicker, like with big fish to small fish sooner. So instead of it taking 8 to 10 years for you have like that cyclical cycle, right? It's going to be more like 3 to 4 year periods where you can have 2 to 3 years where you can crack giants, and then it's kind of going to dip because they're going to die off. Then you have to wait for the next crop. But hopefully we have some good spawning seasons. This year we had post-spawn fish like the 5th of May, which was wild. That's never happened before on our end of Lake Erie.
Yeah.
All right.
Crazy
So,
early. Yeah, it was crazy
Yeah.
early everywhere. It was wild how quickly things accelerated this spring.
Yeah. So, dude, there's probably some people, I mean, myself included, that are sitting here that you're throwing a dark sleeper, you crack that one, and it's a 9-pounder. They're probably like, Cobi, what in the heck is your setup and pound test line, and all that jazz that you're throwing on that? So, kind of give us a rundown of what you're throwing that dark sleeper on.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the dark sleeper is I'll pick it up and kind of use it as demo here. For those of you that aren't super familiar with it, it's a little kind of goby imitating swim bait. Or find my camera here. Goby imitating swim bait. It's got a hidden hook fin, right? So they're hidden by the 2 dorsal fins. This is that bait that fish ate, by the way. So it's got a little piece of line on there, got the teeth marks, missing eye. But it is notorious, I think, known by many for having some issues with hookup percentage and hookup to land ratio, just due to some of the nature of the fins, the nature of the way the fish bite it. And so that being said, there are some modifications, and it is important to use the correct setup to kind of help increase that and improve that. Up until the last 2 seasons, I had been using it on the Megabass makes a rod called the EMTF, Extreme Mission Type F. It is a 7.5. It is a very cool rod in the aspect of that it is a moderate taper, so it has a much deeper bend. It's kind of a mix that you could throw. I love throwing like bladed jigs on it as well, because it has a much deeper bend, kind of like a cross between like a glass and graphite. It is straight graphite, but it emulates elements of throwing it on a glass rod. The guys talk about the delay. Right. So that's why I really enjoy it for this bait. It gives you a little bit of a delay when you get the bite. Allow that fish to position the bait within its mouth, and then you're able to give it a good hook set, and then you're able to pin them, what the positions are, that type of thing. The last 2 seasons, I've switched over to the Destroyer P5 series. They released a rod specifically tailored for it called the Destroyer, for the dark sleeper rod. I'm sorry. It is a 7.1 5-power, which is like a medium. I'm sorry, is it a 4.5 power? I think it's a 4.5 power. So it is like a medium heavy. It is, again, has a slower action. It handles, you can throw all the different sizes of the baits. I throw, the 3/8 when I'm up shallow, the 3/4 out when I start stepping out a little bit. And it handles all of the range very well. I pair it with, I run 2 different setups, 2 or 3 different setups with it. I pair it with a 7/3-to-1 casting reel, and then I usually will run either 12 or 20-pound fluorocarbon. And 20 pounds seems like a lot, but when you're dealing with the shallows and a lot of zebra mussels or snaggy cover, we got areas that we fish that have a lot of reeds. Those fish will often pull you in the reeds and get tangled starting, so they're kind of gnarly, you get snagged. And so I found that the 12 didn't give me the confidence to get them back out. So I will pick up the 20-pound, and the 20 is actually what that fish was on, which is crazy enough. So I had utmost confidence through the fight that she wasn't going to escape, which was a good peace of mind to have. So that's the setup. So it's 20-pound. Sunline Sniper is almost exclusively the fluorocarbon I use. I'm not sponsored. It's just the stuff works. It doesn't let me down. And it's really important to have utmost confidence in your setup and your gear when you're tangling with fish of this class. You don't want to have a bad hook point or a bad line, that costs you because you're trying to save a few bucks, or so that's the setup. It was the P5 rod with a 7/3-to-1 casting reel and 20-pound fluorocarbon. The 12 is what I throw most often when I'm in more clear water scenarios or more clean bottom scenarios. But when you're dealing with all the zebra mussels, it can be really helpful to have that little bit of extra reassurance, because you're often scooting the bait in the sand or hopping the bait around and that stuff in the gnarly cover.
Love it. Now, I know there's multiple different sizes of the dark sleeper. What is like, would you say the length and the weight? Because I know each length has like 2 or 3 different weights that you can purchase in the dark sleeper. So,
Yeah.
what would be like your go-to dark sleeper length and weight size that you're throwing in like that 2 to 10 foot of water, let's call it?
Yeah. So I throw the one I have in my hand, the one that she ate is a 3/8 ounce. It's a 3-inch size. That is the one that I use most often in the shallower water. And then I almost always have, they make a little 2.4 inch that I actually run on a spinning setup. It's the 7.4. It's called the Enforcer. It's one, if you look at my Instagram, you look what rod I have in my lap. That Enforcer is one that I catch a lot of fish with because I run, swim baits on it. The little dark sleeper, I'll throw like a bladed bait or tube, and sometimes just a lot of the single hook application stuff. That rod is fantastic for it. It's a 7.4 medium power. It's just a beefy spinning stick that handles, that little jig hook that's in that 2.4 inch. The 2.4 inch I'll throw in the quarter or the 3/8 ounce size, and then the 3/8 ounce I'll throw in the 3-inch. That's probably the one I throw the most, is like the 3/8 3-inch. It's just a good size, a good profile. I like the bait because I can cover water with it, right? So you can wind it like a swim bait and just get interactions from fish, get a follow, get a bite, get a fish to show itself, chasing it in. And then you can also fish it on the bottom and you're not losing that effectiveness, right? You're still able to present it to them as if you were throwing a tube or something that you're keeping constantly on the bottom. So it's kind of a dual purpose, right? If you need to go chuck and wind and you need to go cover a big stretch of new water, or you're covering water you haven't fished in a while and you need to go look at something a little bit more thoroughly, you can just kind of scoot along and use your eyes, that kind of method.
So if you're not scooting along and just kind of fan casting, well, not fan casting, making particular casts, what is your presentation for it on the bottom? Like, how do you fish it as a bottom contact bait? Because it's not a football jig, right? Like, it's not a swing head. So there's got to be a particular way to present that bait to get bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple different things that I like to do with it. You can just kind of slowly creep it along, right? Just like a regular swim bait, keeping contact at the bottom, nose bumping through the rocks, bumping through the stuff. That little tail has an action. I got to hold it up a little higher. The tail is very small, but it has an action that I kind of describe as spastic. It's just a very subtle, very quick quiver. And I think it emulates, a fleeing prey of some sort, whether that be a goby or a small bait fish, very well, because you see the way they respond to it when they see that action. It does really well. So it's almost always just either a steady wind, or I will do like a lift and drop, kind of a hop, pendulum, if you will. You're lifting it up and then letting it kind of pendulum back down. I want it to be as realistic as possible with the goby, and obviously they're not doing much up and down. So most of the time it's just kind of creeping it along the bottom, start and stop, or like I said, just swinging it back up. If that makes sense.
So, yeah, no, for sure. When people think of going trophy hunting for largemouth, they think, I'm gonna go throw a big glide bait, giant top water, big spoon. They think big baits. When you think trophy hunting smallmouth wise, obviously we've been talking about the dark sleeper, but like, what are the somethings you're gonna have on deck when you're just going to chase trophies? And to add on that, so that part one is like what's on deck. Part two, do you think it's a bait thing, or do you think it's simply just an area and approach thing?
That's a good question. I'll start with the second question first, because that makes more sense, I think, from my head.
Okay.
I think in cases it can be a bait thing, but oftentimes I think having the right presentation in the right area is more important, right? Being where those fish live or being where the fish is often more important than specifically the bait. With that being said, I think having something tailored to what they might be looking for or after is very important. We all know that smallmouth are very visual fish, very much so. It is important to kind of emulate something that they're after or that they are looking for or will draw their attention. So I think it's important to have a bait that kind of, fits in the realm of what they're looking for. I don't think I think I saw, is it JP? Is that you? There you are. Yeah, James. Yeah. I think JP was asking about like big baits and glide baits for smallmouth. And I think a lot of times you'll get them to be they're very curious by nature. So they'll come look at the stuff. But it's hard to get those, oversized ones to make a commitment to biting, a bait like that. Because they can see the hardware, they can see the hooks, they can see all that stuff. Bailey, you're a big glide bait guy. I know you've been crushing on it, but it can be, in my experience, been difficult to get. It's been difficult to get those bigger than average ones to make a mistake and actually bite it in a way that you're able to ever land them, right? Or even get close to landing them. And then kind of going back to the other part of the question, what's on deck is obviously very seasonally dependent. It kind of comes and goes for me throughout the year. But I would say there's a lot of different tools that I use. I would say that, I'm not doing anything too crazy off the wall as far as, like a tube is one that I have in my hand all the time. I know it sounds simple because so many people throw it and it's been good for so long, but it works. It's a bait that you can fish in, 1.5 foot of water out to 70 foot of water. And it's one that gets bit all throughout that process, all throughout that depth zone. And you can fish it a bunch of different ways. A tube is on deck. I always have like a swim bait of multiple different sizes of swim baits. You guys know the spark shads. I'm a big fan of the spark shad. The 4-inch, the 5-inch sizes are ones that I, typically see the bigger fish responding to it better in some scenarios, because it's just a bigger offering. You can get, we all know that like the little ones work, right? We get tons of bites on that. Obviously that's a great way to cover water and get bites if you need to catch a fish, right? Or find fish. But when you want to step it up and get that fish that's a little bit bigger than the rest of them, offering a larger meal can sometimes kind of help alleviate you catching the little ones and kind of limit you down to more of the bigger fish. So the 4 and 5-inch spark shad are ones that are almost always on deck for me. A tube, I love a drop shot. I'll throw various things on a drop shot when I'm hunting for fish because it's just a different presentation. A crankbait is one that I rely on a lot to trigger larger fish. It's something that kind of just gets a different kind of reaction. So there's a whole slew of crankbaits. We could do a whole episode just on talk about crankbaits, and different presentations of them. A crankbait is such a good option to cover water. You guys that have, followed me on Instagram, that Deep X 300 is one that I love. That's a bait that I fish from, 4 foot of water out to 15. It's made for like that 13 to 15 range, but I walk it through rocks, all the time. And it does really well for me, with some really big fish that I think get jaded to other presentations. They see a lot of similar things come through. And so you have something like that that's just making noise, moving around, and they're just like, what in the world? And they just can't, they get overwhelmed almost by it and have to come take a look because they're so curious to the noises. So
yeah. Don't even give them time to think. You hear that now and then because they're like, was it Rick Clun that said speed kills? If you just don't give them time to think, just make them react. Yeah. Where then other guys are like, I gotta go throw a hair or a spy bait, or something that they can see in that, which works. But when you're talking about hunting, I mean, you don't want to. You want to have all the odds in your favor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the hair is another one that slipped my mind. That's absolutely one of my tools that I love doing up shallow. With visual fish, it's just such a good way to get those fish that are ultra spooky to to commit to something. That's something that I've a few of the guys in here. Jake Fox is a homie from up here, and he picked up a couple of my hair jigs. I did a little release of them through my story one time this winter, and he's had some fun with them so far this year already. They catch them, man. I tie my own on some little heads and they catch them. They're fun.
That's slick. Okay. We'll have to let us know when you do another drop because we will definitely.
A little sneaky release here. Yeah. I'll hit you up.
Yeah. There's a few guys like Zach Eggleston, who's a hammer up on the St. Lawrence, makes them as well. Anytime with that garage hair jig type stuff, I'm all over.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun, man. To see the different perspectives, the different takes on it too, because there's so much you can do within it. I love tying mine in the head, just without the blade. And it's, that bait just has a nice profile and kind of glides really well. And I think the added realism obviously is a big factor too with those fish, because they can come up and look at it and there's just a little eye looking right back at them, from the side, and it works.
That's awesome, dude. That's freaking sweet. Andy, you got anything left for Cobi?
No, you're talking about the Deep X 300. Have you come on the Deep 6 as well?
Yeah. The Deep Six is a different style of bait for me. It doesn't seem to have quite the aggressiveness of the Deep X300. So I love it in like colder water scenarios. And it works really well around like deeper grass and stuff as well. It can be really cool in that aspect. Yeah, fishing deeper grass.
So the Deep X300 must be more of a speed crank.
Yeah,
so you can
totally.
fish it a little faster. Got it. Makes
Totally.
sense.
Yep. Totally. You can speed crank both of them. They both work with like speed cranking. But they absolutely, the Deep X300 is more of an aggressive one for me personally. You know, like if I'm fishing it around heavier stuff, I'm smashing it into stuff,
better
into through stuff.
Got it. That's sweet. More stuff to add to the cart and buy. Great.
That's right.
Thanks.
Sorry about that.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
We appreciate the info.
Yeah. So did you mentioned offline some modifications for a dark sleeper?
Oh yeah. That's something I should definitely get into here. Yeah. So again, like I mentioned, the hook is behind the fin, right? So it's covered from the front, from the back, from the top. Some people just, I've seen like cut the fin back a little bit, make it flush with the hook point. But a couple things that I like to do with the baits, I have a couple rigged ones here that I do. What I do with them is I will add this one's missing the little stopper, but Decoy makes a little small trailer hook like this. It's just essentially just like a small, I don't know if you can see that on there, but it's a little small like spinnerbait trailer hook that I will add. I'll either do this, which is a single hook one if I'm fishing around any kind of snaggy stuff, or I'll do a small treble, like a number 8 treble. And I'll run it right on the main jig hook. You can see that right there. Yeah. Right on the main jig hook. And I will normally add a small rubber stopper right over top of it. That kind of just keeps that hook on there. So when you're getting bit, you'll get a lot of them that'll bite the rear of it. When you're getting bit, you're having something that's just behind that fin that they don't have to quite commit to it as much in order to get them, right? And so you're able to kind of pick off those picky eaters, because when you are creeping it or when you are kind of slow winding it, you'll get a lot of them that'll come up and punch it, or bite it or nip it from the rear. And I don't know if they are necessarily just curious about how it's going to respond, or if they are just trying to get a feel for, is it real? Is it going to run away from me? So having that there can turn some of those short bites into bonus fish, added fish. And the other method that I do that is a little bit more extreme is I actually take the jig hook and I cut it right off. Let me move my fat hands here. I cut the jig hook right off. I cut it flush with the back of the bait. Can you see that there? Yep. Cut it flush with the back of the bait right off. And then I run either a fluorocarbon in most cases if it's ultra clear, or a small braid leader that I tie to the main eyelet, and I run it back to a small treble. This is a number 4 or 5, I believe. Forgive me if I'm not correct there. But what I do with that, you can see I kind of bent that one prong. I run that flush back through the fins, and I hook it in just behind the hook, right? So it's just behind where the original hook was. But you see what you're left with is just 2 prongs that are just flush with that right there. See that, how that kind of works? And this one's flared out a little bit because of the way it's sitting. But normally I try to keep it so the fin itself is not affected, right? So it keeps it as an authentic and you don't get any rollover or blowout. So I tuck that in there right there like that. Say again?
It's almost like a frog hook you have, basically.
Yeah, it's like or like a swing away, like the Mag Draft has like the swing away hook that comes off when you hook a fish, right? It's a similar. As you hook this, it comes off, and they have this short bit of lead that's going to keep them from being able to leverage it when they're jumping, right? They're just, it's free swinging, and in turn, I found that it kind of helps keep the bait alive a little longer too, right? You're not tearing up the nose of it, the weight's not coming out because it's keeping the teeth and the teeth rash off of the head of the bait. It's keeping things kind of more maintained, so you get more fish for your bait. I had one this spring on a day where I think I must have caught close to 80 fish on one bait before it finally gave up the ghost. And it was all on that hookup method where it was, where it was hooked in the top and they're just swinging away at it. So yeah, those are the main modifications that I do with it, just to kind of increase hookups and, help with hookups in certain scenarios. Again, like you can't throw the treble hook one in like the grassy stuff versus you can't throw, the swing with certain scenarios. There's other. It was on a regular one, no additional hook, but it's I always have one or two of them kind of modified on the deck. So
that is freaking cool, dude. I can't say I've seen that mod before, Andy.
Thank you.
No, I haven't either.
It's freaking
Cool.
Well, for folks that are watching this, yeah, you got the juice now for some modifications for that bad boy, and links down below to Omnia Fishing if you guys are looking to go snag some up. What do you say your favorite colors would be of the Dark Sleeper if you had to say, Cobi?
Oh, that's a good question. Obviously, I'm partial to this. Is called Haze, which is I really like it. It's kind of like a light and gray back with a tinge of blue and a little bit of orange. It's more of a translucent body. It emulates the Gobies really well, in my opinion. I really like that one. This one is called, I'm probably going to butcher the name. I believe it's Mutsogoro. It's kind of a gold with a little bit of dark black and a little bit of blue in there. And then another one that is utilized quite as much by Northern guys is called, am I still with you? Still got me?
Yeah,
yep.
You got you.
Okay, cut out for a second. Is called Shirao. It's like the sexy shad looking one. It is like a translucent white with a yellow, like a yellow or a chartreuse stripe down the side. And that Shirao, when it's in like the environment, kind of tends to reflect the colors that are around it. It kind of absorbs the colors of the environment. So when you put that one in a clear water sandy scenario or next to a rock, it just kind of looks like everything else that's around. And so I've caught some really big fish on that one. Yeah, there it is right there. Yeah, so you see it's kind of a white base, looks like a sexy shad, but when you put it in the environment that the fish are in, it emulates everything around it really well. And I've caught some really big fish on that color. Those would be my three that I would say are probably my top ones for if I had to shoot from the hip there. So
that's some freaking gas, dude. Now I see there's the 1/4 ounce, 3/8, half, 3/4 ounce, and I've heard some people that kind of tend to lean towards the heavier sizes. Do you have a preference?
I really just try to match the scenario that I'm in, right? What I'm doing with it more. If I'm winding it, I'll step up to the heavier sizes because of the flat face on the bottom of the bait. It has a tendency to kind of want to ride up. It rides high for the sizes. You might think a 3/4 ounce is going to run way too heavy for what you're fishing it in. But that 3/4 ounces with that big bulbous profile tends to ride up. You can wind a 3/4 ounce in 4 foot of water and have no problem. You'd think it'd be like, you threw a Kitech on a 3/4 ounce head, you'd be dragging mud all day. But this bait, the way that it swims, the way that it kind of stay a little higher. So usually up higher than you think you would. So
that's wicked cool, dude. Well, bro, anything else you think that we might have missed or might not have asked when it comes to trophy hunting for these freaking giant brownfin tunas?
That's a good question. I don't know if there is. I would just say that like one of the biggest things that I would think has changed is you have to be out there when others don't want to be. You have to be willing to fish in the stuff that sucks. You have to be willing to, because those are the days that you're able to catch one when they're slipping up, or you're learning something about their movement patterns because you're there earlier or later than everybody else is. That has been one of the biggest things that I have noticed in my game has improved. I've always been a nut when it comes to fishing and nasty stuff, but the more that you do it, the more that it has helped kind of increase the chances and the opportunities you have with tangling with one of those really large fish, to give you one of those 7+ or 8+ pound fish.
Heck yeah, dude. That's amazing. Well, bro, what would you say is for you one smallmouth fishery? This might not even apply because maybe you've hit all of them, but one smallmouth fishery you haven't been to yet that you'd love to go explore?
That's a good question. I don't know, man. I'm fortunate to say that I have gotten a chance to explore the reaches of the Great Lakes really well, and I love that's one of the things that I love the most is breaking down new regions of the Great Lakes. So I would say maybe if I had to pick like a zone or a section, I would just say Canadian waters in general. is something that I'd love to spend more time looking at, just because of the, their conservative seasons and stuff. I think has kind of increases the potential for the fishing to still be kind of untapped or or unexposed. I love finding places like that are off the beaten path, that are far away, hard to get to. You're beating yourself up, you're running long runs. That kind of stuff is one of my favorite things to do. So I would say, yeah, like different regions of of the Great Lakes in themselves, I would love to continue to build on. Probably like the Canadian waters, if you had to say like a section, because the only place I've caught a smallmouth from all the Great Lakes and all the connecting bodies of water, except for the Niagara. So I still got to catch one out of the Niagara, then I'll have one out of every river and every lake, which is kind of cool. Complete the chain there.
Well, so now you have the Niagara, but there's two sections. You have the upper above the falls, and you have below the falls. So really, it's two, because they fish completely.
I gotta get two more places.
Well. Yeah,
I'm gonna go. Let me rewrite my list here real quick. Yeah,
and I
missing one.
They're both really fun fisheries, but they're completely different. So Bailey can attest to that 100%.
Yeah, they're both a lot of freaking fun, though. That's for damn sure.
That is neat. Yeah.
Well, dude, you let us know when you're coming, and wings and beer are on me.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, I'll have to make a trek over that way. I'd love to. I know our good buddy Garrett, I talked about earlier, he's coming up that region for the summer again to do a little bit of work and guiding and stuff. And so we've talked about linking up. So we all swing through on the way over, see him.
And you're going to pass right through. If you drive through Canada or you go the long way, you're coming right through Buffalo. So.
That's true. I can't hide. I'll come over there. Yeah.
Either way, we're going to know. And if we don't get a text, at least, to go get food, we're going to be pissed.
Yeah, no kidding. No, I'm always down for food. You know that. Wings anytime. Anytime.
That's awesome, man. Well, dude, so we've obviously had you on the show. We've given you the whole the 3 people to dinner question at the end.
Yeah.
But let's phrase it as this: if you could choose one person to go smallmouth fishing with, one person in the industry, who would you pick?
Yeah. That's a good one. I would have to say Amart. Amart would be a choice. He was a big reason for my, interest in megabass in the beginning of my careers and stuff, and an inspiration to so many of us, I'm sure. So he would be my pick, because I've gotten to look, thankfully with my line of work, I'm very fortunate. I've gotten to work with a lot of these different guys. But I only got to work with Amart once for just a few moments at ICAST one time, and I would have loved to share the boat with him sometime, because he inspired so much of my style and what I've learned. So he would be one. That would probably be my answer. Would be Aaron Martin.
That's freaking cool, man.
God rest his soul.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, Andy, you got anything else for Cobi?
That'd be my pick.
No, just don't catch another 9, because I'll be even more jealous.
I can't promise that I won't. I'm going to keep trying.
I do have a question for you, and I'm sure you have it written down. Since you started specifically chasing trophy smallmouth, we know you have 1 9-pounder. How many 7 and 8 pounders do you have?
I am super big on notes. You saw me pick this up just a second ago. I keep all kinds of super detailed stuff. I've been doing it since I was like, I don't remember when I started doing that. I was like 11 or 12. I used to count my bass I catch out of the paddle boat, and I'd measure and weigh all of them. I was super nerdy about like just stats and numbers, and so I still keep that to this day. And now I do a little more detailed stuff. I believe I have 5 over 8. And I believe that the total over 7 is 41. I have 41 fish over 7.
Oh my God.
What do you think, Bailey, when you think of this number, right? There are guys like myself that have been smallmouth fishing for like 15 years, right? I've come close to 7 twice. I've never touched 7. I know guys that have been smallmouth fishing their entire life that have never touched 1 7-pounder, let alone been close to an 8. Like, to have 41 7-pounders is just unfathomable, probably to most smallmouth fishermen. That's insane. Like,
look,
think that's insane.
There are people that, and I'm sure there's some too that, that are very, that are quiet, that might not live on social media.
Yeah.
I know there's a few guys in the Midwest
Mm-hmm.
that are, I'm
Real.
not going to say they're up to par with Cobi, but they're pretty dang close. But I think there's people that pave a path for trying to understand a different caliber fish, which I think, Cobi, you are locking down for when we talking about the brown fish. And a great correlation to this
Thank you.
is like what Ben Milliken has been doing in Texas. I'm sure there's guys in Texas that have been fishing there for 20, 30
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
that have never caught a 10-pounder. And then he finds a
Yeah.
different approach to go and attack those fish.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's countless more that are doing the same
Yeah.
thing Ben is, but now he's going and catching giants all the freaking time because he's unlocked a different way that those fish
Yeah.
behave, areas, how they operate. It's the same thing. So I think like
Absolutely.
Cobi said at the beginning of the show, I think it's a mindset thing. I think it's where it's just
Mhm.
the same guys that have not run into a 7 is because they've fished the same ways, the same things for so long.
Mhm.
Where I think it's just if
Mhm.
you have to force yourself to be completely like get off the beaten path that you've been on for so long,
Mhm.
if that makes
Mhm.
any sense.
Mhm. Absolutely does.
Which I
Yeah,
think,
that's 100%.
Andy, it's something you've been starting to do. So I think it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, when I have free
Yeah,
time,
you'll get one.
definitely I start
Yeah.
just adventuring. But yeah, which I have,
Yeah.
it's unreal. Like how much stuff I found just like, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna pull up in this area of the lake that looks like nothing, and I spend an hour
Mhm.
graphing. I'm like, ooh, okay.
You're like, I didn't know that was there. Yeah. Yeah.
but like it's
yeah,
actually
it's
kind of
amazing when
ironic.
that
Like
happens.
I'll be practicing for a derby, and I'm like running across the lake, and I'll just stop and grab a sandwich and a drink as I'm running, and I'm like, I come back and I'm like, oh, like this is cool. Like let me graph around here for the next 40 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me look a little bit more. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's like a little candy hunt. You're looking for something, and you never know what you're gonna find. No, it is cool,
Yeah.
man. You're absolutely right, Bailey. I think we can, every once in a while you can get lucky and catch one of those upper class fish mixed in with others or while you're doing your normal thing. But in order to do it repetitively, it can be, like you said, there has to be a shift, there has to be a change of approach in order to tangle with them on a consistent basis.
Yeah,
Love
for
it.
sure, man. But dude, for real, thank you so much for taking the time out to come on and teach a heck of a lot of great information for people on trophy smallmouth hunting and just ways to approach it, different ways to think about it. I would totally understand every single ounce of you that would say, "Hey, dude, I just caught this 9. Screw you. I'm not going to tell you anything about this because I want to keep doing it
No.
myself." But seriously, appreciate you
Yeah.
taking the time to do so. You're a great teacher, so I appreciate it.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. No, I'm happy to do so. You guys have always been awesome supporters of everything that I'm doing. So the least I can do, for real. Appreciate you guys and what you do. And I'm always happy to talk. Always happy to talk fishing, man. I love this stuff and I love these fish. So seriously, no problem. Anytime.
Heck yeah, bro. And Andy said he doesn't want you to catch another 9 because he'll be jealous. And
Yeah,
I
go
think I
catch
agree
a
with
10.
that. I was gonna say, yeah, go catch a freaking 10, dude.
Just jump right over 9 and go right to 10.
Sorry, you broke up there. Say that one more time.
I said next you have to skip 9 and go right to 10 because I think you said you went from like 8.4 to 9.3.
8.2 to 9.3. Yeah.
Yeah. So your next step in the progression would be a 10.4. So
That's
10.4 me here,
goal.
right? And go get them.
That's the goal. Yes, I'm trying. Every ounce of me is working for that one. We'll see.
Love it.
We'll see. Yeah. Hopefully the next time we talk, it'll be about that fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, put the whole Dale Hollow controversy to bed and just break the dang record, would you?
Yeah, could you imagine if it's
just switch it.
Like in smallmouth tend to live in like the same areas as we're trying to wrap up the show. Like, what if next year you roll up in the same spot, like and the water temp is right, and you make the same cast, and all of a sudden it's like bang, oh my gosh, it's a 10.4, and it's the same fish. Like it could happen. Smallmouth
could.
are creatures of habit; they tend to inhabit the same areas, so it could happen. Go get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you're right. That would be wild to tangle with. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, okay. So my last one here, it just came to me before I promise I'll let you go, Cobi.
You're fine. I'm good. Yeah.
Right.
No rush.
Yeah. Now that you caught this 9.3 and you mentioned it's a healthy fish. It's got years left. Do you think you have the capability? Have you thought about the idea that you could set a world record?
Deep. Absolutely. You think about that. I think I try to set my goals in kind of steps, right? I think I stepping stones. For a while there, it was like an 8-pounder was the number that, obviously a double digit was the ultimate goal, but starting it, you have to do it in baby steps, right? And so a world record is definitely something I would love to see. I don't know if I have been around the genetic potential yet to catch one that large, but I know I've been around the fish to catch a double digit. So I'm taking my steps here, I think. And then, as things continue to progress and I continue to learn it, then hopefully at some point my targets will be set on a 12. For now, I think I'm set on a 10 first, and then I'll work my way to the 12. So I hope
it has to be 10-4 to keep the pattern in mind.
Keep the trend going. I wouldn't be mad about that. A nice 10.25 would be a nice easy number.
If it's 10-3, it doesn't count. I'm sorry. It has to be 10-4.
Disqualified. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That would be an incredible fish. I can't imagine what one that size will do to me, because I'm not normally a super emotional person, but that one got me all choked up. So it'll be cool to see. Yeah, tangling with one of that next size. I can't imagine.
He's gonna go from choked up to weak.
I'm excited to try that. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, it was a lot, man. It's really cool. So much energy is poured into this for me, man. So when I see one or when I get the hands on one, it's like a point of all these days of all of this effort, all this craziness. There's so much that goes into it. So it means everything to see one and catch one, see results of your efforts. Yeah.
Oh, I do have another question for you.
You're fine. You're good. Yeah.
You pertain the dark sleeper to the spring only bait, or is it something that you're throwing all year long?
It is, it is very much so more of a spring tool for me. It is something that, I do well with in the early spring months, especially so. For whatever reason, they tend to eat it differently in my experience as the water warms and as the water shifts. And so my hookup percentage gets kind of goofy, and they just tend to be more pecking at it than anything. So it's still something I'll throw throughout the summer to get those, like I talked about before, to get those interactions. But it's not necessarily something that I'm counting on to catch a big fish. I shift again over towards things more bait fish oriented style stuff, an underspin, a crankbait, swim bait, as the water warms and that, as those months warm, that kind of thing.
Awesome.
Heck yeah. Well, Cobi, man, seriously, again, Thank you very much for joining. And man, we got to get you on the show more often, bro. Go catch a 10.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you. The goal, yeah. You set the standard high. I'm going to work on it. I might have to wait a few months. We'll see. But hopefully, I would love to come back again soon. That'd be fun. I appreciate it, gentlemen. It's always good to see you guys.
Realistically, when do you think your next shot will be? Like October, November, December? Like when they start developing legs again? As we ask them another question.
You're good. Yeah, no, they're fine. They're all good. Like I said, I'm open tonight. The egg weight obviously adds an element to it. They will get fat again in the fall. You will see fish that are gaining weight again. You probably saw some of the photos and the guts of the fish that I caught last fall. They're ridiculous how much weight they put on. But yeah, so the chance that a super freak, I think, is always there. But I think it's important to have that additional weight to cross those extra numbers, right? Because they only get so long. So in order to exceed those frames and build into their frame, they have to have the insides to match to cross those numbers. So so I would say late cold season is obviously prime time for those windows. Egg weight is huge. That makes a big difference. That early spring window or the spring window is when they usually are at their heaviest. But we saw, that 10-pounder that was caught a couple years ago. That fish was, later in the season and had the frame, the size to get to that ridiculous weight. So that's a good example of even without the egg weight, that fish could still reach that number.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, bro, I promise no more questions, and we're going to wrap up.
You're fine. You're fine. I'm having fun. It's all good.
Thanks, man.
All good.
Greatly
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right,
For
Cobi.
real.
We'll be talking to you real soon.
Take care, guys.
There you have it, folks. I would definitely claim him or proclaim him as the biggest smallmouth trophy hunter in the north, right? I mean, you got him, you got Joey out in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
You got Kuzvis up in Canada. I mean, there's a handful of guys, but I think he's got to be in that bucket of just people that are tapping into a different echelon of smallmouth.
You know, I find interesting is there's a lake just north of Toronto. We're not going to name it. People that know smallmouth fishing know that it's like the premier lake in Canada and Ontario to go smallmouth fishing. I wouldn't be surprised if that's like the next lake to pump out like a 10 plus pounder, because it's goby ridden and it's got giants and they chase big shadow Cisco. Basically, I believe they either chase Cisco or golden shiners around in that lake as well. And every year there's like a 35-pound bag to win a fall derby there.
And there's that. You got multiple Great Lakes that could factor into there. You got Dvorak over there in the Pacific Northwest. I've heard rumors of other lakes that we're not even going to say the name of that are out towards that region that are putting out even better numbers. Like, it could happen anywhere. I mean, I feel like
there's a couple Finger Lakes that could happen on here in New York.
Yeah, I mean, they hit 9 on Cayuga, so it's like, I mean, I'm pretty sure
he
that
hit 9 and then caught a bigger one than the year later, and then didn't weigh it in for the tournament.
Well, it was 8 when he broke the record,
for
New York State record, and then it was 9, but then didn't officially get it scored, something along that lines. But either way, I didn't hear about it being caught this year, so it's either decided, hey, I got caught on the same deal year after year and left, or it's dead. Which I'm sure it's probably dead. But yeah, I mean, it can happen in so many different places, man. I feel like the smallmouth record is definitely going to fall in the next, say, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
I feel like that's very reasonable to say.
It's scary to think that we might be reaching into like the golden era of smallmouth, right? Like, because we're like 25-ish years into the goby inhabitation of the lakes, and we're probably I think that's scary to think that we might be reaching the peak of like the best smallmouth fishing that our lives will ever see soon. But who knows?
Yeah, I mean, dude, I heard Kevin Van Dam and Zona and them talking about this on Mercer's podcast, and they said, we thought that the best, the peak of smallmouth fishing was 5 years ago, but look at it. Look what keeps happening year after year. It gets better and better. It might not be numbers, it might be size. I think the numbers.
I'll take size all day over numbers.
So. Right. But I'm just saying, like, I think the numbers side is simply a factor of fishing pressure. And when we have 45,000 people from the south that are on St. Lawrence River opening weekend, that definitely is going to factor in on how a fishery does.
But if you actually look at the pages, those guys are out there for like 2 months beforehand, cracking them when it's out of season. Like,
I mean,
all the regulations, it's terrible.
I've had people send me pictures and have people told me that they have had people telling them that the boat ramps up there have been packed full when they're not supposed to even be. They're out there, quote unquote, walleye fishing.
Walleye and pike fishing.
I already went on when I had Rudd on here, when it was just Rudd and I already went on a rant calling people out on it, and it sucks. They definitely should not be doing that. But either way, there's so many different places it can happen. But year after year, the fish keep getting bigger and bigger, where it's like we might say this could be the peak, but like, I don't know, man. Like, you keep seeing these bigger fish that keep showing up in more quantities, and there's bigger fish getting tapped into. We're learning more as technology advances and more people dedicate the time to really focus on not the mainstream forms of catching them, like what Cobi's doing, trying to go outside the norm, pave his own path of what these bigger fish might be doing, where it's like to Ben Nowak's theory of, it's the biggest fish of in an area is you might have the school of 4 and 5 pounders here, and the biggest fish that lives in that region might be 300 yards, away from them.
Sure,
where that 30 yards is going to be on its own.
Looking at them,
right? Yeah, and like Cobi's mentioned earlier, it's just it's a mindset thing. You got to think of what would an apex predator be doing. It's not going to hang out with all the little ones. It's it's good. Those bigger apex predators are territorial.
Yeah.
It's I think as baits, technology, and anglers advance with knowledge, and these fisheries change when it comes to zebra mussels and gobies and different things like that. I don't know if we can confidently say that this is the peak. I would love to say I think the peak of smallmouth fishing isn't even here yet. I don't know.
Let's hope.
We can't really say that. I mean, I
we
think
don't know. We won't know until it's past, honestly.
Right. Like everything. But I think it's just like the Kansas City Chiefs and they're winning. Hopefully it's in the past. We know that they've had their peak. They're done.
Andy Reid's there for like 9 more years, so who knows?
Right. But either way, dude, I'd love to see I'd love to see the world record go down, but I'd also love to see more state agencies do better job of protecting these fish too.
Yeah.
That's what I'd absolutely love to see. And I think it's going to play a hand in if we can keep this level of size class going, and it's going to fall into that. But it's going to be state agencies protecting them, and also anglers having integrity and taking care of them themselves. Like Cobi talking about keeping that fish in the net versus putting it in the live well or keeping it out of the water. He did everything he could to make sure that fish was comfortable, healthy, staying in the lake, regulated water temperatures, that speaks volumes. That's taking care of a fish. There's nothing wrong with anglers from around the country coming up to St. Lawrence River on opening weekend, not before that, and going and taking pictures of fish. I will say, I do have an issue with, say, anglers that come up to St. Lawrence River and box 5 fish just for a freaking picture and put them back when they caught them all off beds. That's a different thing too. But that's a whole different soapbox that I don't want to go on right now. But it comes down to state agencies doing their job and anglers protecting the fish on their own with integrity.
Yeah.
And I think that could be, that's not even just a smallmouth though, too. That's
all species of fish.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, that factors into everything. So my long-winded soapbox is over, but either way, amazing show with Cobi. Learned a crap ton, and thank you to all the people that joined in the comment section. That it seemed like it was a big hit. So people are pretty excited for this show to come out, and Cobi, a big thank you again, and round of applause for him for coming on and being a great teacher. Again, his social media and everything is down below. Highly encourage you guys to follow along on his journey. I think you'll definitely regret not following along his journey to that 10-pounder, because I don't think it's very far off.
Yeah.
Hopefully for him, obviously I think the world would love to see that happen. But man, great show, Andy. And anything else for the folks before we wrap this sucker up?
Oh, at the moment, I don't think so. I think we're good.
Well, we'll leave you guys with that. And next week we have Drew Gill, John Garrett, Carl Jochimson, Cliff Prince, and whoever wins the Fear My Heart incentive for Smith Lake joining us on the show. So we have quite a show.
Yeah, that's a good one, man.
It's going to be fun because Drew Gill's been on a freaking tear. John Garrett is no stranger to this show and has been on a tear.
I'm glad I don't have a trip next Wednesday. We're going to a holiday because that one might go 3 hours. So
that could be a long one. That could be a very long show, which for the MP3 folk, we'll end up splitting that one up for sure.
Yeah.
I think likely what will happen is we'll get Carl, Cliff, and whomever wins the Smith Lake Fear My Heart incentive on first, and then we'll get on Drew Gill, and then tear the show down with John Garrett to wrap things up.
Awesome.
But definitely don't miss out on next week's show. And we got some more stuff coming up in the following weeks that we already have scheduled, and looking forward to sharing that with you guys too. So make sure you guys are tuned in. Follow us on social. Appreciate y'all as always. And we'll see you guys next week. Peace.